Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a new Lords of Fallen video. If you're like me and you wanted to go deep into agility for a build, then I have a very cool dual sword version of that for you. This uses two short swords with their awesome moveset. These are the Wraith weapons that scale great with agility, but also can provide some damage with Wither. Of course, we go harder with the combo though and begin buffing our weapons up with Umbral damage using the Umbral weapon spell, increasing our damage even more as we smash targets with fast multi-hit combos that build up that damage very quickly. There's also utility in the build since we can do a bit of magic in our ability to send out maybe some Umbral shots or even bombs depending on what you need. I knew from the start that I wanted to do a cool dual blades weapon build, and I knew that would probably involve some sort of weapon buff of some kind to help the many hits that are landing actually build up something of value in terms of damage like status or element. So as soon as I saw one of these swords, I knew this was going to be the theme. So if you'd like to run this yourself, let's explain the build. So to begin with, you will want to pick your starting class of Exiled Stalker ideally. Of course, you can still do this with other starting classes, but that would be a good one because it begins with high agility and it gets you straight into the theme of dual wielding weapons right away. From there, you want to level for the gear you're using. You need 13 agility so that you can actually use the left hand and also right hand version of the Stillness swords. And the main buff we're running is Umbral weapon, so you need at least 15 in Radiance and Inferno long term, although you do get the Umbral weapon spell a bit later in the game, so you could wait on that. You could go harder with Radiance and Inferno if you want to use more Umbral magic once you actually have access to it, but as you can see, 15 in both should be the fine starting point for the early and mid game. Either way, once you've got the base stats that you're going to need for the gear, you can then push agility for damage as your main stat while leveling, say, vitality and endurance to the points that you're happy with. It's probably a good idea to wait to level your Radiance and Inferno until towards the mid game where you're actually getting the spells to do it, and push your vitality, like I did, a bit higher so you have some survivability. Now let's talk about the actual weapons. We have the right and left hand bringer of Stillness swords. What's funny is that you don't necessarily need like the correct pairing of left and right. You can technically, like I've just done, equip two right hands if that's what you want to do. The difference between them is that they actually have different stats. So for example, the right hand one comes with a little bit of Wither damage buildup, which is nice to have as an extra bit, whereas the left hand is just raw damage and seems to scale better with agility because of that. I like the idea of having the complete set and having a little bit of Wither damage, but where it's not relevant, it's not a big deal. I didn't fully commit to it. These are dropped in two ways. One is the multi-boss fight called the Bringers, a gank squad that can drop these swords found in the Cistern region in the Umbral world, and that's a good way to get it because it's a guaranteed drop for the left one in the fight, and there's potential one to get the right one there as well. They are optional bosses. You won't need to encounter those, so it's entirely possible to miss them. You could encounter the Skin Stealer boss fight here and then just leave up the elevator immediately. So while you're here in the Cistern, make sure you go into the Umbral world and head down in the central area. Eventually see a path of makeshift cages that you can drop down to and cross to the central area where you see one Wraith, but in reality there's three here. You will have to deal with all three at once as the fight progresses, so I'd really recommend you focus one down ASAP to keep the fight under control so you're never actually having to deal with three at once, ideally. Once you win, you'll get the left hand weapon at very least, and maybe the right one as well. However, as it turned out for me, you can get these swords even sooner than that. The Wraiths exist in the normal game, usually showing up around in the Umbral world when you've got enough dread build up for them to spawn. These versions might drop their swords, and since they use both, it appears they will drop either one of them with some luck, which is how I got both of the swords. I did so in Lower Calrath, but technically you can find these Black Wraiths as soon as the Fitzroy Gorge. Now it did take some farming of two specific Wraiths, but here's how I did it. As you progress through Lower Calrath, you'll eventually come across the second vestige of that area, Lydia the Numb Witch. From here you can turn around and go back to where the Wraiths are, heading down and back across the Umbral Bridge that you pulled to get here. Over on your right, as you're crossing this Umbral Belly Bridge, is a wooden platform with the first Wraith just standing there, and this could just be your farm target. You just need to be careful because there's a Fire Enchantress mini-boss that's hanging around here too that you'll probably want to kill first. This is the one that dropped the right-hand version for me, and technically if he only drops the right, you could just use two right-hand versions, that would be fine. To get the left-hand version, I actually got one just down the hill from here. By dropping down carefully so I don't take too much fall damage and working my way all the way down this hill to the point where there's this wooden bridge over me, I go up there and there's that other Wraith. This is the one that dropped the left-hand one for me. Just be careful because obviously in this footage I'm just showing you the location, so I'm running through, but there's a lot of enemies here, many of them dangerous. It's worth going slow and clearing them out, farming some vigor bigger at the same time as you farm these swords. I will warn you though, this method took me a good 40 minutes, maybe even an hour to get the weapons I wanted, so you could just progress the game and go face the optional gank squad boss that I mentioned to get a guaranteed drop. Now, in terms of runes, I only have 2 socketed in them right now, and obviously they only take certain shapes, but the main rune that you should care about is the Demexus one. It increases your physical damage while dual wielding, which is obviously what we're doing, so I think this is the most important rune that at least I've been able to find that I could recommend to you. I was able to slot one of those runes in both of my weapons, so that's really nice, and then you're just looking for other things of utility, like, hey, more posture damage from the rug rune here. It's whatever you can fit in that's relevant for the build. Now, obviously, what we're doing is weapon buffing up with the Umbral weapon spell, and this is going to greatly improve our damage, especially against those that are weaker to Umbral damage type, which is a lot of enemies in the game. Now, to cast Umbral spells, you're going to need the catalyst that can do it. Unfortunately, we can get one very easily from the Skybridge hub location. So if we come around here, there's of course the vendor that's found in the Umbral world, so we swap to that, and here he is, Molhu, who will actually sell you varieties of Umbral spells and items. He will sell you your first catalyst, which is required to actually cast these Umbral spells. This is the Charm of Fortune's Sight, and it'll cost you 650 vigor, so not too expensive. At that point, you could buy some early spells and get casting some Umbral spells early in your playthrough if you want to. But then, obviously, we have the spell itself, the Umbral weapon. This is also sold by Molhu here, but you have to make enough progress in the game before he begins selling it. That progress seems to be successfully make your way to the Cistern region, and then after I defeated the Skin Stealer boss there, his stock and also others in the hub, it all upgraded and he began selling more things. This is where he starts selling the pendant that we want, the faceless carving, as well as the weapon buff. So that brings us to our jewelry, starting with the pendant. So I just said that I can buy that from Molhu now, the faceless carving. It increases your wither damage and wither defense, which is nice because we are doing wither damage with one of our swords. Then we have the more complicated one in the ring. There are 3 options that I'm looking at and a 4th that I would love to be using, but I don't have. So here's the accessible ones. The early game Mine Owner's Ring is great. It increases your stamina and stamina regen, which is important when you're swinging so much with a build like this. The other ring I've got equipped is the Cursed Worm Ring, which is found in the swamp area. It increases your strength and agility by 1 each, which is not major, but nice. There's also the Defaced Ring, which we find in the Pilgrim area, improving our health. Or we could buy the Ring of the Duty Ring here in the hub, which will increase our vitality and endurance if that helps you more. All of these are up to you. They're all relevant and useful for the build. The ring that we actually care about and actually want is the one that I don't have. It's called the Grayson's Ring. It offers more damage while you're dual wielding, which is obviously ideal for this build. The problem is that I have no idea where you get it. We know it exists based on the wiki and certain data mines of the game, but from where it's dropped, we currently don't know. I can't find any information about it, only people discussing the ring and no idea where they find it. So if you know where it is, tell us in the comments, that'd be great. Then we have your armor, which I'm just wearing the full Pietas set just because I like the way it looks. It's ultimately coming down to personal preference and fashion. Technically, you could wear some of the actual Stillness set, these black robes for the theme, but I don't think they look very good in this game. You can see my encumbrance meter and I'm in the medium roll. Basically, you want to wear the heaviest, most protective armor without heavy rolling and staying in the medium. Alternative to that is just fashion and personal preference, so do what you will with that. When it comes to gameplay for the build then, it's a pretty simple combat loop. You just buff up the weapons with Umbral and go to town with whatever you're fighting. Unless it's like hyper resistant to Umbral, and then there's no point doing that, and you just use the raw weapon attacks. As you attack, you'll deal physical damage, you'll get some wither buildup, which is nice, and you'll also deal lots of Umbral damage if you buffed up against the target. For the attack types, obviously you've got running heavies, which can be great, or even running lights, but I find them a bit slow. The light attack combo works a charm if you've got to do short punishes, but if you can, I would recommend the multi-hit attacks, which is done on a controller by pressing L1 and R2 together at the same time. With these 2 swords, it's this clever 3-hit combo. You hit once with each weapon at a time, and then double swipe with both at once, which deals fantastic damage. It is a brutal punish, and one that I rely on in boss fights or against mini-bosses whenever I have the window to do it. Ultimately, multiple hits in short succession to build up wither and stack your Umbral damage from the weapon buff. that's going to be a great way to do it. Obviously, you can rely on your various Umbral spells for those that you're using, maybe a ranged poke, or the bombs that deal a bit more damage but a bit more awkward to use. There are a variety of Umbral spells in the game, and I'm only using the basic ones, so it's up to you whether you want to use more than that. But there you have it. That is my Umbral-based dual-wielding build that works in the raw damage of dual attacks with a damage build-up, Umbral buffs and spells, becoming that dark assassin that really fits in this horrible world. Hopefully this inspires you to try dual wielding, if not this specific build. It is very good in this game, and the combo attacks, like I've said, they feel incredible, whatever weapon and build you're using. Anyway, this has been my first Lords of the Fallen build video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.